The classroom buzzed with chatter. One boy sat quietly at the back, his gaze fixed not on the whiteboard, but on the lunch boxes that other children pulled from their bags. Miss Elena noticed. She always did. The boy, Daniel, was sharp, eager to learn, but his thin frame and pale cheeks told another story. His uniform hung loosely from his shoulders, and his energy seemed to fade by the hour. Every day he arrived early, stayed silent, and left with the same hollow look in his eyes. That afternoon, while other children ran out to the playground, Daniel stayed behind, sketching something in the corner of his notebook. Miss Elena walked over quietly. "Daniel," she said gently, "aren't you going to eat?" He hesitated, quickly covering his notebook. "I'm not hungry," he muttered. But his stomach betrayed him with a growl loud enough to echo in the quiet room. His face flushed, eyes darting to the floor in shame. Miss Elena didn't press him with questions. Instead, she opened her bag, pulled out a wrapped sandwich, and placed it on his desk. "This is too much for me," she smiled softly. "Help me finish it?" Daniel froze. For a moment, pride and hunger waged war inside him. Then, slowly, he reached for the sandwich. His small hands trembled as he unwrapped it, taking careful bites as though someone might snatch it away. She didn't watch him eat, didn't want to embarrass him. Instead, she sat nearby, grading papers, pretending not to notice. But she heard his quiet whisper after the last bite. "Thank you, miss. If this moment touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay with us." Days turned into weeks, and Miss Elena began noticing the pattern. Daniel never brought a lunch, not once. He always found excuses. "I already ate. I forgot I'm not hungry." But she knew the truth. Hunger had become his silent companion. One afternoon, the children laughed over shared snacks, trading biscuits and juice boxes. Daniel sat apart, sketching again in his notebook. Miss Elena quietly slipped a small paper bag onto his desk. Inside, she had packed a boiled egg, an apple, and a slice of bread. He looked up at her, startled. "Miss, I can't." Her smile was firm but kind. "You can. Think of it as homework. Eat everything before the bell." Daniel's lips curled into the faintest smile. He obeyed, carefully eating each bite as though it were a treasure. The other children never noticed. It was their secret. The routine grew. Every day after school, Miss Elena found a reason to stay behind with him, marking assignments, tidying the classroom, waiting while Daniel quietly ate the food she had prepared. Sometimes she even packed leftovers from her own dinner, wrapped carefully in foil. Daniel started speaking more. He told her how he loved drawing airplanes, how he dreamed of building them one day, but whenever the topic drifted toward his home, he grew quiet. The shadows in his eyes said enough. Things were not easy there. Miss Elena never pushed. She knew that kindness didn't need questions. It only needed consistency. One rainy evening, as Daniel finished a sandwich, he suddenly said, "Miss, when I grow up, I'll buy you a big car. You won't ever have to walk to school again." His voice was so earnest, so determined, that she laughed through the tears threatening her eyes. "You just focus on your studies," she replied gently. "That will be the best gift you can give me." He nodded, but inside, he was already making a silent promise, one far greater than she could imagine. What Miss Elena didn't realize was that these quiet afternoons, these simple meals, were planting something far deeper than full stomachs. She was feeding a dream, a determination that would carry Daniel through the darkest years of his life. One crisp autumn morning, the classroom felt strangely incomplete. Daniel's desk sat empty, his chair neatly pushed in. At first, Miss Elena thought he might be sick, but as the days passed, his absence grew heavier. She asked around quietly, but no one knew much. Rumors floated. His family had moved to another city, perhaps even another country. The truth was unclear. All she knew was that the boy who had become part of her daily rhythm was suddenly gone. Time moved forward. Miss Elena continued teaching year after year. Yet deep inside, she carried an ache. She never knew what became of Daniel. Did he finish school? Did he ever get enough to eat? Did he still dream of airplanes? On the night of her retirement ceremony, surrounded by students old and new, she smiled and clapped along. But her thoughts drifted. In the sea of familiar faces, one face was missing, the boy who had once promised to buy her a car so she'd never have to walk again. Life settled into quiet simplicity after that. Her days were filled with the occasional visit from former students, yet Daniel's absence lingered like a page left unfinished in her life's book. She often told herself, perhaps that was my role, just to feed him for a while, to keep him going. Maybe that's enough. Years later, one ordinary afternoon, as she brewed tea in her modest kitchen, the distant rumble of an expensive car engine broke the silence. Tires crunched against her driveway. She frowned, setting her cup aside, curiosity pulling her to the window. The sleek black car outside seemed entirely out of place in front of Miss Elena's modest little home. Its polished surface gleamed under the afternoon sun, reflecting a life of wealth and power that felt worlds away from her quiet garden and peeling porch paint. Her heartbeat quickened. Visitors were rare, and certainly none who arrived in cars like that. She opened the door just as the driver stepped out. He was tall, confident, dressed in a tailored suit. For a moment she thought he must have the wrong house. Then he turned, and she saw his eyes. Those eyes, curious, tired, and full of dreams, were the same ones that used to look up at her from the back row of her classroom. She staggered back a step, hand flying to her mouth. "Miss Elena," he said softly, his voice rich with emotion. "It's me, Daniel." Her lips parted, but no sound came. The boy she had once worried over, the boy who had vanished without a goodbye, now stood before her as a man, radiating success she could barely comprehend. I don't understand," she whispered. Daniel smiled, though his eyes shone with unshed tears. "Years ago you gave me more than food. You gave me hope when I had nothing. I promised myself one day I would return, and I would make sure you knew what your kindness meant." Her knees weakened, and she gripped the doorframe for balance. "But Daniel, look at you. You've become someone." "A billionaire," he admitted, almost shyly, as though the word itself felt heavy. "But none of that matters right now. What matters is that I never forgot you." The moment hung between them, filled with decades of silence and memories unspoken. Then Miss Elena stepped forward, tears brimming in her eyes, and embraced him as though no time had passed. The driver discreetly looked away, giving them privacy. When she finally let go, she laughed softly through her tears. "I used to pack extra sandwiches for you, and now you arrive at my door in a car worth more than my entire street. Life is funny, isn't it?" Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. "It isn't about the car. It's about keeping a promise." Behind him, the car door opened, revealing something that made her breath catch once again. A wrapped box sat on the back seat, one that looked far too carefully prepared to be ordinary. Miss Elena's eyes lingered on the elegant box in the back seat. It was wrapped in deep blue, tied with a ribbon that shimmered like silk. She turned to Daniel, confusion and hesitation softening her features. "What is this?" she asked gently. He stepped forward, his tone steady but tender. "A piece of what you gave me, multiplied many times over. You once shared your lunch when I had none." With careful hands, Daniel lifted the box and set it on her porch table. As she untied the ribbon and lifted the lid, her breath caught. Inside were documents, the deed to a new house in her name, keys to a car, and an envelope heavy with security, enough money to ensure she would never struggle again. Her hands trembled. "Daniel, I can't accept this. I only did what any teacher should." But Daniel shook his head firmly, emotion breaking through his calm. "No, Miss Elena, you did more than teach. You saw me when no one else did. You noticed my hunger, not just for food, but for a chance. You gave me dignity. Without you, there would be no billionaire standing here today." Her tears fell freely now, her voice breaking. "I never imagined that something so small could ripple this far." Daniel reached for her hand, holding it gently between his palms. "Every kindness matters, Yours saved a boy. And now, I want to make sure you never feel the emptiness I once felt." The old teacher gazed at her former student, pride swelling in her chest. Around them, neighbors peeked curiously from behind curtains at the sight of the luxury car and the emotional reunion. But in that moment, the world seemed to shrink to just two people, a teacher and her student, bound forever by an unspoken lesson. Miss Helena finally smiled through her tears. "You've given me more than wealth, Daniel." If this moment inspired you, show some love with a like and subscribe to be part of the next story.